Just now the question is, you know, I showed the slide that from Lant Pritchett's study that showed that only 0.3% of poor people said that charity had anything to do with them escaping poverty. And then the question is, what should we do? What should we do about world poverty? Now, this is kind of the universal question in development, the what should we do question. And you know, I'm not picking on you if I kind of pick this question apart, because it's just the universal question. You know, it comes up in every development seminar, lecture, conference, talk, meeting that I've ever been to. What should we do? So let's kind of pick this question apart. Okay. First of all, who is we? Who's
college student.
Okay, so that's a better question. I would like your question a lot better if the question is, what could I do? I think that's the entirely appropriate question. You know, what can I do? And you know, a nice thing about preaching the values of individual liberty and self-reliance is, you know, I don't actually have to answer that question. I just say you have to figure it out for yourself. You know, I mean, the basic insight from economics is that each of us has a certain comparative advantage in the kind of horrible jargon of economics. That we have some things that we're very good at, other things that we're not so good at. You know, and the secret to sort of functioning in our economy is, you know, that we specialize in the things we're good at, and we don't try to do the things we're not good at. Also, turns out that helps a lot with a happy marriage if you follow that principle too. If you want marriage advice, but so you know, the first question you ask yourself is sort of like, what are the sets of skills and knowledge sets that I have that could be most useful to poor people, that poor people would want from me if they knew that I was available to them, and then try to investigate and figure out, you know, what. It's a lot like, this is why the searcher metaphor, I think, is very powerful, because it's exactly like what a private entrepreneur does. You know, a private entrepreneur tries to figure out, you know, what am I good at that I could kind of supply to the market that a lot of people are going to want. You know, so Steve Jobs figured out that a lot of people were going to want an iPhone. So he was good at that. He figured it out. He supplied it. He made a huge killing, and that huge killing, those huge profits that he won, those are actually percolating down to lots of jobs and lots of wealth created, at least before it evaporated in the stock market. So, you know, this is the same thing that we ought to be doing in foreign aid. It's thinking like an entrepreneur. What do the poor think of the poor as the market? What do they want? And you have to do sort of market research. You have to find out a way to figure out what people actually want. And how to help them in a non-patronizing, respectful way. You know, how can you help them help themselves? How can you lend to them what they would like to borrow from you? So, you know, sort of classic example that I could give of kind of that kind of thing is put myself in that situation when I was a much younger person. What I wanted was a scholarship from the U.S. government so I could get a PhD at MIT. And I got one, fortunately. I got a PhD. That's the kind of ideal kind of vehicle for helping someone, is the kind of vehicle that, you know, you are supplying an opportunity to someone that otherwise would not have that opportunity. I would not have been able to go to MIT without a U.S. government funding. And yet at the same time, it requires the person to help themselves. You know, I was the one who had to decide what I was going to study. I had to pass the exams. I had to work hard. And so that's, you know, that I think of as kind of the model for the kind of vehicle for assistance. Now, I'm not saying that scholarships is the only possible thing. There are other things that are much like that. Microcredit or something like that. Cash for education programs or something like that. There's all kinds of programs that have that feature. And so figuring out programs like that, and then figuring out what you can do in the best position that you are in to do something positive. And, you know, it may not even be sort of direct work with the poor. It may be something, you know, much more indirect. It may be spreading good economics ideas if you're a trained economist. It may be monitoring the aid agencies to hold them accountable for whether they got measles vaccines to eastern Upper Nile State in South Sudan. You know, I would, you know, like everyone to sort of think of like maybe adopting a project. Pick a project out from a random project that you think you might know something useful to say about, and you know, look on the websites of the aid agencies and pick a project, and then make that your baby that you're going to monitor the aid agencies on that project and see whether they really deliver or not. That's also a very useful thing to do, because right now that's what we're lacking. We're lacking this huge. We've had sort of a huge public movement that called for more aid. Now we need another huge public movement to call for the aid agencies to be held accountable. We need a huge public movement of watchers that are watching what the aid agencies do so that they do deliver. They do have the incentive to deliver. So that's something that you can do. Yes?